what it means to be African in America and around the world, and the work that needs to be done to liberate our people from these imperialist powers. And so many of us who come here, we understand that the work that was started 400, 500 years ago when the first European came on the shores of Africa, that work isn't done. Didn't end with the American Revolution, and damn sure didn't end with the Civil War. And that's why that struggle for Black power in the 60s is still being carried on. And so, you know, this being the 60-year anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party, I think in New York, you know, it's very, you know, symbolic to do it at a predominantly Black institution that was founded out of a struggle for the establishment of a school that was supposed to be under community control. And I think that work is, is still going on. So thank you, welcome to this program, and I'm passing it on to my comrade in arms, right, Tag?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Conrad, and happy Born Day once again. And it looks like we're now live on the YouTube, which is great. Thank you, Conrad, for that. We still are just making sure that all of our panelists have access to the mic. And so on that, just want to continue to welcome everyone in here. If we can bring in as a panelist the phone number that we have listed there, somebody that has that access, that would be great. So that we can hear from our panelists there.
Kwame, we need to also promote Jalil as a panelist. He's already in the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, Sis Betty and Jalil, y'all should get invites as panelists.
Okay, it looks like we are good on that, and if not, I'll check over on this other device here. And from here, would like to pass the mic to my comrade, Brother Jorge, who has a slideshow to share with us in honor of those that we are here to honor right now and their legacy. So please take it away, comrade.
We can't hear you. Sorry, Jorge. Still unable to hear you. Sorry.
No, we're not hearing you, Jorge.
Still none. Sorry. Nope. Sorry. Can read your lips a little bit, but no audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. Welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us at this event on this presentation of celebrating Black history, as well as our comrades in the struggle, particularly folks who were in the Black Panther Party, as well as the Black Liberation Army, and who are some of them serving many, many years as political prisoners, some of them free, some of them passing on behind the walls, and some still languishing behind the walls as well. So um, I just want to, so for folks who don't know what Jericho is, Jericho was launched publicly in 1998 during a march on Washington, D.C. that brought together former political prisoners, activists, lawyers, and organizers to fight for the freedom of political for folks who've been incarcerated uh, and not able to see the light of day. So it was founded around supporting political prisoners in the U.S., and it challenges the idea that the U.S. did not have political prisoners at all. And many of these folks are activists from the 60s and 70s, still incarcerated decades later. Folks who were part of the Black Liberation Movement, the indigenous power movement, political prisoner, or sorry, Puerto Rican independence movement, anti-war, anti-imperialist movements. And so a lot of these folks were incarcerated for, 10, 20, 30 years at that time. And Jericho was founded really to support them, to give them a voice, to educate folks around their struggle, and to get them free, advocate for their freedom. Oh, so let me advance this. Okay, so that's essentially who we are. Um, so, uh, over the course of the last 30 years or so, um, we have been able we have had some success in freeing some of our political prisoners. As you can see on the slide, here are a couple who've been recently released, such as Veronica Bowers, Leonard Peltier, Sundiata Acoli, and these are folks who are aging in prison, many of them facing serious health issues, and it was really through a lot of, defense committees, um, Jericho support, public support, and there was also, in some ways, political, organizing for political support to get them released. And so here are some others that have seen some successful campaigns for their release. But as I mentioned, there were a number of political prisoners who have also been released, and some of them have passed away since then. There are our ancestors. Safia Bukaria is one of the founders of the Jericho movement, along with Jalil and Albert Washington. Sekou was released and recently passed away. And then with Jalil Al-Amin, we know that he's also recently passed away behind bars. So what we can say is that there's a lot of work to be done to get folks out wherever possible, and make sure that they get and if they're behind the bars and facing health issues, we're doing a lot of work towards campaigns to get them the medical attention that they need, and oftentimes it's successful. Sometimes it's not, but that's the work that we're doing. So a couple of other political prisoners that we're currently still supporting and that are currently still behind bars are Shakur, Mumia Abu-Jamal, Kojo Bomani, Kamal Siddiqui, Reverend Joy Power here in New York State, and Larry Hoover, among others. So there's folks who have been in prison for 40, 50 years. And what we're also seeing now is that there's more political prisoners coming out of more recent movements, such as the water protectors, people who were protesting cop cities throughout the states. And um, what we're seeing is there's an increased um, crackdowns on protest. Um, there's more domestic terrorism enhancements on what are simple uh, protests. There's more surveillance on art and activists, and really they're trying to criminalize thought crime in some cases. And when I say thought crime, it's really more about people's ideologies, their associations, and just sort of the disagreeing with what the administration wants you to think, right? And we've seen this through history in terms of the program, where they would target activists, anytime that they were opposing the administration. And so Jericho works on educating folks around these policies and the struggles against them. As part of this program, we'll have a couple of panelists, and I think the moderators will do a bit of an intro of their backgrounds, but we'll have Yasmeen Majid, we'll have Jalil Muntaqim, we'll have Shakur and Laura Whitehorn on the panel. So the main idea here is that we want to celebrate the work celebrate this struggle around Black liberation, the contributions that they've had in this struggle. There is a lot of work to be done, and we're hoping that folks who are participating can learn a little bit about the work that is being done, and hopefully can also participate and help us with getting people out of prison. With that said, I'm going to pass the mic to SB and to Sister Betty Davis, who will help moderate the panel.
Well, Yahuru, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Uhuru, we can hear you, comrade.
All right, as you know, we are our own liberators, so let's get busy.
There it is.
So
Now, I know that we are
I don't see
speaking
Sister
of-
SB, Comrade SB.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. No, our comrade is working on some just logistics with the communications right now to facilitate one of the calls, but they will be on in just a few.
So shall we start with Comrade Laura?
Well, but before we get fully into it, perhaps we can just kind of remind what it is that we are focusing on
All right.
today,
Mhm.
just to recontextualize.
So shall I start? I thought I was going to do this in collaboration with my partners. It's okay for me to proceed?
Yes, they're going to be on in just a few seconds. They have to facilitate some communication real quick.
One of the things you've been hearing reminds me of the phrase that I just used, and I use it all the time. I'm just coming from a meeting dealing with the loss of the Republic of Brooklyn by the people who rescued Brooklyn in the 1980s and became the victims of one of the largest transference of wealth from one group to another in the history of this country. I'm referring to deed theft. But those of you who know your language, you know we're talking about colonialism. You know, we're talking about capitalism. And if you know anything about the warriors that we are celebrating today, and I do mean celebrate, they changed that script. And I'm talking about the warriors known as the marvelous Black Panthers. You couldn't be a Panther if you had not read Frantz Fanon and didn't understand it was your job to liberate yourself. You had to read Malcolm X. You had to read the Red Book because you had to have the proper script. A surgeon cannot just cut. A surgeon has to know what they're doing. And this marvelous youth, they stepped out on the history of one of the worst colonial empires of the world, and they changed it. And so now I don't call it prison. They're not in prison. They're in death camps. These are death camps. And every generation has to fight for its own liberation. One of the worst slave owners in the world, Thomas Jefferson, said that. I hate to say it. He was right. It's up to every generation to have the revolution to stop it. And Jericho is honored because they have always been able to have comrades from the next generation step up to the plate. But I have to confess, I didn't do my homework. I don't know who I'm supposed to pass the mic to, but I want to talk about one comrade. I had the honor of speaking with his mother, and we were waiting for him to come out of prison. And so I said to her, I was telling her how much I admired what an incredible job she did raising her warrior son. And she told me a story about him. She says, you know, we were not wealthy. And of course, this mother was a Panther herself. She said, and one day when we were kind of short on food supplies ourselves, I'm looking for my son. And where is he? He's outside giving the last of our food at the age of 12 to the homeless. And I'm talking about Jalil Muntaqim. This is the quality of the warriors that we are asking you to liberate today. We're asking you, don't let them go behind the bars. We're asking you, don't let Mumia go without his eyesight. Bring him home seeing so that we can enjoy looking at him and he can enjoy looking back at us. And at that point, I need orders tag. Who do I pass the mic to next? Because, you know, I could go on forever.
No, much respect, Sister Betty. We're right here looking at the volume levels in the space. But if you could proceed with just the full intros for our panelists,
All right.
and then the remaining panelists should be on by the time you're through with the intros.
Okay, so if somebody could push up the list of the first group of panelists. I know I thought Sister Comrade Whitehorn was on, and I thought she was going to lead it off.
Oh, right. No, we have the you should have the intros over there. Let's see if we can resend those.
Yeah, I'm traveling, as you know. I'm just, like I said, I'm coming from a campaign against what's the ethnic cleansing that's going on in Brooklyn.
Respect. Do you see those there on that thread? The full intro text should be right there on the thread.
In the chat?
Yep.
Oh God, I've got to move my car. I'm going to pull over. I apologize, comrades.
All good, Sister Betty. How about this? I could go ahead and do the intros from here if you would prefer.
Yes, I think you're going to have to because my car.
Okay. All right. So if everyone's able to hear me, we're just dealing with the sound over here as well. But ideally, you can hear me okay?
We can hear you fine
very
here.
well.
Perfect. Thank you, comrades. So we will start the intros with, as was just mentioned, our dear comrade, Brother Jalil Muntaqim. Jalil Muntaqim is a veteran member of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, author, and a dedicated organizer fighting for human rights and movement building. A former political prisoner of nearly 50 years before being released in 2020, Jalil continued the struggle from behind the walls by fighting for prisoners' rights and against penal slavery, as well as helping start the National Jericho movement in 1988 and the Spirit of Mandela Coalition and the Spirit of Mandela Coalition in 2018. Jalil has continued to support and lead in the national liberation struggle on Turtle Island and is an outspoken advocate for the liberation struggles of all peoples facing colonialism and occupation. Oh, and I see that our comrade is here. Great to see you. I could continue with intros unless anyone else would like to.
Well, Tag, I'm glad you chose Jalil because, of course, that was who I was describing.
No
Brother
doubt.
Jalil Muntaqim. He was a warrior for the people before he even joined the Panthers. And he's a warrior still. And we quoted you today at the colonialism struggle against deep theft in the Republic of Brooklyn, Brother Jalil. We said we are our own liberators.
Yeah, well, we're super happy to have everyone. Oh, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sweet. Hey everybody, I'm SB. We've now got all our panelists here. I'm guessing that you only got through one of those intros, bro?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. We'll briefly go through the rest, and then actually I think we'll start with a question for Baba Jalil. So our other panelist is Laura Whitehorn. They're the co-founder of the organization Release Aging People in Prison, or RAP, which organizes to end mass incarceration through campaigns to free older prisoners and those serving long sentences. Herself a former political prisoner of 14 years and veteran of the May 19th organization, Laura continues to fight for racial justice and against U.S. imperialism. Another panelist we have who's going to be a bit late, I believe, is Yasmeen Majid, who was a member of the Black Panther Party in New York. She's also a member of the Black Panther Commemoration Committee and National Alumni Association of the BPP. As a Panther, Yasmeen was taught to serve the people, body and soul, and her work continues to reflect that commitment. Yasmeen has worked for decades to raise awareness and release the Panther political prisoners and prisoners of war. And our final panelist is Kwame bin Shakur, a politicized prisoner currently held captive in Indiana, serving a 110-year sentence for a crime he did not commit. Inside, Kwame has worked tirelessly to organize comrades on both sides of the wall towards a national strategy of decolonization and self-determination for all oppressed peoples. He is the chairman and co-founder of the New African Liberation Collective and national director of the Prison Lives Matter movement. Thank you all for being here. We're so grateful for your time. Yeah, I think we wanted to actually we're going to play a quick audio that our comrade Mumia sent in, one of our elders and dear leaders who we've been already raising up. And when we first were planning this event a month ago, he recorded this for us. So we'll start with that, and then we're going to lead in to talk a bit more about the origins of Jericho.
We are not hearing that.
The Black Panther Party, the reign of youth. For many people, while the name Black Panther Party may be familiar, few facts beyond it are. There may be some hazy familiarity with the black and white posters of two young armed black men clothed in leather jackets and black berets, or the image of a man sitting like a black warrior chief, a rifle in one hand, a spear in the other. For a generation of black men and women, those posters were taped to the walls of their homes, and more importantly, on the walls of the offices in which they worked, offices of the Black Panther Party in over 40 states across America. For them, the Black Panther Party was a central theme in their lives, for in those few short years, they learned lifelong lessons of service to their people and how the real world. They were not teenagers between the ages of 15 and 19. and many were high school dropouts who were drawn to the gritty reality of a life lived in the revolution than the illusory world of school, which often was perceived as a place of indoctrination rather than education. For most of us, the civil rights movement is far more familiar, for it projects a vision of America that is far more palatable than that of the Black liberation movement, which was seen as the unwelcome stepchild of the civil rights movement. In fact, many people came out of the civil rights movement and, disillusioned by the anemic rate of change, were attracted to the revolutionary energy of the Black liberation movement. The Black Panther Party was a part of that movement. Formally organized by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale on September 11, 1966, in Oakland, California, Newton and Seale were 24 and 29 years old, respectively. Seale was an Oakland anti-poverty worker. Newton was a student at Oakland's Merritt Junior College. Kathleen Neal Cleaver, who served on the party's Central Committee, was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, and also a college student. During this same period, two young men in Chicago, Illinois, Fred Hampton and Bobby Rush, were members of the NAACP Youth Wing, but felt themselves attracted to the dynamism and militancy of the BPP. They would found the Illinois chapter of the organization. What was the party? It was, in fact, several different groups over its long life. Many scholars have opined that the group was nationalist, revolutionary internationalist, intercommunalist, and electoral. That is to say, it went through these many phases of development as a response to internal and external influences and pressures. Gender dynamics in the party. Most who have commented on the gender dynamics in the BPP comment not from knowledge but from conjecture. For while it is uncontroverted that the Black liberation movement, and also the civil rights movement, by the way, was deeply sexist in orientation, it's easy to assume that the BPP followed suit on this question. In point of fact, by its rhetoric, its rules, and to a lesser extent, its internal practice, it was far less sexist than its competitors and opponents in both movements, and indeed in the most advanced sectors of the white radical, anti-war, and student movement as well. Party Chairman Bobby Seale noted that in the year following the organization's founding, 1967, women constituted 60% of the membership. This is not to suggest, by any stretch of the imagination, that the party was somehow free of sexism. It was not. But it consciously, politically, and by internal regulation and practice struggled to address and resolve such issues at a time when their political competitors were quite retrograde on this and related issues.
Thank you so much for starting us off with that. Yeah, that's okay. So a little voice from Mumia to start us off with the origins of the Black Panther Party. And as we know, sort of as that audio progresses and the story progresses, the folks who were primarily targeted and put behind the walls were primarily Black Panther men. And a lot of the organizing to get folks home was led by a lot of Panther women. Safi Bakari being one of the co-founders of Jericho movement with Baba Jalil. I'm wondering if, Jalil, you want to start us off with speaking a little bit about the origins of Jericho 98 and the strategy to draw attention to US-held political prisoners and prisoners of war. We have about 10 minutes, a little under 10 minutes until iftar break.
Assalamu alaikum, peace, prosperity, jumbo, Irene, half a day, guten tag. Whatever your native language, I wish you peace and solidarity. In regards to the history of the advent of the Black Panther, of the National Jericho movement, it began not by me, it began by the RNA, Republic of New Africa. They used to have a march around the White House every year, right, called the Jericho March. And in 1996, they stopped doing it. And I didn't understand why. And so I raised the question, why they stopped? And I contacted my sister, my dear beloved sister, Safi Bakari, and I suggested to her, I said, listen, we need to get this back going again. So she contacted Baba Herbert Ferguson. Barbara Herbert Ferguson had been a COINTELPRO victim, a COINTELPRO target. He went into exile, became a colonel in Guyana, came back. He was a member of RAM movement prior to that, member of RAM. And then when he returned, he did time in Attica, got out, got back into the struggle, which is normal for us in certain instances. And they came to visit me at Eastern Correction Facility. And they said, Jalil, listen, we can do this, but we're not going to be able to do it in the time frame that you want it done. Because me, I like to say, get it done, do it now, right? And he said, okay, it was 96. So he said, we'll take us some time to get it done, but we're going to get it done. So in 1998, we had the National Jericho March to Washington, D.C., and thousands of people came from across the country for that. And we decided at that point in time, we need to continue. And that was the beginning of the National Jericho movement. From that day, from that March of 1998 in Washington, D.C., we decided we're going to continue this effort and began to establish chapters and began to organize and support political prisoners across the country. And why is this important? Because political prisoners represents the best of us. They are the ones who sacrifice their life in liberty in pursuit of our freedom, in pursuit of our liberation. And therefore, it's important for us to understand that it's going to have any type of liberation movement, any type of movement whatsoever. If you don't support your political prisoners, then you're not really supporting the legacy, the determination of your movement and your struggle. And that's why we continue to build our campaigns in support of our political prisoners across this country. With that, I yield.
Thank you very much. Thank you for starting us there. We have about 5 minutes until iftar break. I'm wondering if, Sis Betty, do you have any thoughts you want to take us into that break?
She might still be parking her car.
Yes, I'm just getting in. Thank you for understanding. One of the things I want to emphasize, I can't help it. Jalil got out, and the first thing they did was register him to vote. I think it was one of the prison officials. And then they tried to reincarcerate him for following up on what they told him to do, if my memory serves me correctly. The reason I'm telling this story is that he got out and he hit the ground running. He belongs to an organization now that is helping the poor and underclass hold the wealthy accountable. The life of a Black Panther does not belong to them. They are the vanguard of what it means to show resistance. One of my favorite warriors, Henry Highland Garnett, said that, let resistance be your motto, or let your motto be resistance. I always get it the wrong way. The interesting thing about the struggle of Jalil is that wherever he is about resistance. He is about helping people understand and interpret their life. And I was listening very carefully to our brother Jorge when he was talking about thought control. One of our warriors from South America calls it metaphysical imperialism. It is when you let your conqueror, would-be conqueror, define how you speak and interpret your reality. The Black Panther Party switched that language around. And they did it by taking control over their local institutions. I want you to pay close attention to how our warriors speak, because language is the tool to overturn metaphysical imperialism. This is the role that the Black Panthers did. They changed America's language patterns. And you heard one of our brothers, comrades, talk about community control. Community control has to start with the public institutions in your community. And every Panther that speaks on this panel, I want you to pay attention to what they are doing. And with that, I'm going to yield.
Thank you. Absolutely. We have one more Mumia audio we're going to play for y'all, and then that's going to take us into iftar break, and we will be coming back around 5:55 to start the full panel discussion. Thank you.
Jericho and international human rights law. Greetings to Jericho, NYC, and its struggle to incorporate and promote international human rights law on behalf of political prisoners and prisoners of war in America. This is, of course, a step forward for the Jericho movement, but we have to think of it as an organizing tool, not a solution. First off, what is international human rights law? In its simplest definition, international law is the law of nations. International human rights law is the law of nations as supplemented by internationally recognized treaties and conventions that cover human rights against torture, for example, or religious or political repression against the peoples of the world. Now here's the rub. Can nations ignore international law? The honest answer is yes. For nations exercise their powers internally and, in a sense, exclusively. For countries sign treaties and conventions and then largely ignore them. This push for international human rights law must be seen as an organizing tool, a way to show that nations sign such resolutions but have no intention of actually following them. To quote the late Kwame, organize, organize, organize. That means mobilizing people. And it means building a movement and movements against violations of international human rights law. Movements move people, and they also move states to make decisions that respond to popular will. Right now, as we speak, a movement is growing against what's called elder abuse in prisons. To paraphrase Kwame, we must add mobilize, mobilize, mobilize. Social movements change the world. Mass movements change history. For prisons are terror domes. They are places of state repression, dissolution, humiliation, and death. They do more harm than good, and they must be transformed. Only movements, mass movements, can do that. I welcome you, I greet you, I love you. With love, not fear, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
And with that, I think folks who are breaking for iftar are going to do that. And we're going to play you 2 audios during that time. We'll come back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
We're not hearing that again. We have no sound.
Okay, give me one moment. Let me try to fix that.
Sure. I was just letting you know.
Thank you.
Hmm? Nope. Still not. Nope. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work.
Okay, maybe tag if you're able to try to share.
Yeah, this is where I came. This is where I was when I read 15. I was right there, 15. Oh my! I just noticed.
DJ Denny. And Beans, I'm fucking with this track. I can definitely relate to this cold ass world. Huh? Yeah. At 16, I caught a motherfucking case, it wasn't even me. Public defender offered me 50 years. I got a lawyer and got out in one. Think about the niggas that can't afford a lawyer. Let's go.
This cold world, and don't nobody give a fuck, don't nobody care but us. No, we stuck off in this cold world. They losing niggas in the system, like don't nobody feel them. No, we stuck off in this cold world. You devil getting away with murder, why you act like it's unheard of? We stuck off in this cold world. Got us living in this oppression, and wonder why we stressed. Cause we stuck off in this dirty, dirty world like pot. It got me trapped. You ain't heard it, devil getting away with murder. Got me Ryan strapped. The mirror rights, throwing Danny crackers, killing children. They making billions off the niggas in these private prisons. They gave us dope and give us life for the drug house. Cause we oppressed and we stressing, that's why we thugged out. Got niggas beefing over hoods, we don't even own. They flood our neighborhood with dope and let us kill our own. That's what we facing, my generation that lost their mind. Daddy gone, mama alone, this shit genocide. You speak the truth, they get you right there, they murder Jesus. They close our institutions down, they don't cure diseases. They try to pacify the nation using black faces. They put Obama in position, let us think we made it. Restore our youth from public school, precious boys and girls. 2020, we still struggle, like we stuck off in this cold world. And don't nobody give a fuck, don't nobody care but us. No, we stuck off in this cold world. They losing niggas in the system, like don't nobody feel them. No, we stuck off in this cold world. You devil getting away with murder, why you act like it's unheard of? We stuck off in this cold world. Got us living in this oppression, and wonder why we stressed. Cause we stuck off in this, fed up. Turn on the news, another deadly shooting. All in Sterling, 37, from Beirut. Selling CDs front the store, trying to make it out. 6 shots in cold blood while he on the ground. Nerd to wonder why y'all dying, niggas snipe this shit. We tired of seeing our people murdered like nobody did it. Churches don't wanna hear the truth, they been living lies. They really live indoctrinating, infecting their mind. They come together for the cause, my people lost. But stuff the white man did, they love till they boss. Uncle Time's trying to comment, they ain't for the people. Got Europeans pulling they string, these bitches evil. They put these niggas on the screen, trying to keep us asleep. The Fair County speak the truth, that's why you never seen. They mass incarcerating niggas, now this Jim Crow. That's why they made the war on drugs, like we stuck off in this cold world. And don't nobody give a fuck, don't nobody care but us. No, we stuck off in this cold world. They losing niggas in the system, like don't nobody feel them. No, we stuck off in this cold world. You devil getting away with murder, why you act like it's unheard of? We stuck off in this cold world. Got us living in this oppression, and wonder why we stressed. Cause we stuck off in this cold
This shit
world.
been real. It's past ridiculous. Black man had it hard since the damn beginning. Even when you win, don't ever think you fucking win it. Couple rings and some chains, it's because they trying to trick us. Nigga, get some land, set some goals, make some plans. Going so on that we knowing you can't hold a black man. Stop being ignorant, cause that man privileged. If you would get off your ass, you can go and get that shit. Only motherfuckers who I'm fucking with getting rich. Or they being rich. That's just some real shit. I asked God to change my life and put me around motivation. I end up Rolls truck, badass 3 days later. Just sitting back chilling, thinking about some minutes. Told me Section 8 this here ain't shit, nigga, you can get it. We both came from Nathan, so don't tell me reason you ain't eating, cause a nigga
stuck off in this cold world. And don't nobody give a fuck, don't nobody care but us. No, we stuck off in this cold world. They losing niggas in the system, like don't nobody feel them. No, we stuck off in this cold world. You devil getting away with murder, why you act like it's unheard of? We stuck off in this cold world. Got us living in this oppression, and wonder why we stressed. Cause we stuck off in this.
Believe we lost some of our pins, if it's possible to get
Yeah,
some.
I hear you, but I don't hear anyone else.
You don't hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay, yeah, everybody else is muted at the moment.
Yeah. I never got the bios.
They're in your email, but
In my email?
yeah.
Okay, I'll look again. Thank you. Bye.
Do you think we could pin Baba Jalil as well and Kwame? All right, it's looking like we might have lost Baba Jalil for a second. I know he's been traveling, so we're just sorting out some of that connection issues. But I do wonder if we could just start with just checking in with the folks who are here. I know Kwame's here on the phone. Bro, if you can hear us, maybe you just want to give a quick check-in, say how you're doing today, and we can check the audio.
And also, okay. Ideally, y'all can hear me without all the echo. Okay, respect. So we also do have some warriors in the building and veterans in the building. We wanted to just recognize their presence, and we can kind of share the space here at Medgar so that those of us online can connect. So if everyone is okay, we're just gonna bring the Zoom into the space here real quick. And make sure we got a good, yeah, we got a pretty good shot of the space here now. And just want to recognize everyone that's here in the building, especially our Panther veterans and warriors of the Black Liberation Movement. So much respect. Much respect. And Comrade Kwame, are we able to hear from you? We just heard some audio from Comrade Kwame just now, and perhaps he could share with us some of what that track was about. It's called Cold World, and you can find it on YouTube. And I'm sending that over right now via email in terms of what was just on text. So we can't hear you, Comrade Kwame, but let's look into those logistics. You know, this is when we're connecting across the walls, there's added logistical challenges as we know. So working through it. And what's shouted out in the chat on the Zoom, we also want to acknowledge some of our dear comrades on the Zoom, including Sister Day Kui and Brother Jose Saldana. Many strong warriors in the space, both physically and virtually. So we're honored by your presence, and this is what it's about. This is why we're here. So thank you for everyone's patience with the technicals. I'm sending this over right now. And while we're getting connected with Comrade Kwame's audio and while Bro Jalil is reconnecting with us, I believe that Mumia audio we had some portions still on it. Oh, there goes Bro Jalil. But if there were portions of the Mumia audio that we had to cut short, perhaps we could continue to the end of that. But I see Bro Jalil is there. Ideally, Comrade Kwame, we can hear your line anytime.
I'm in here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, I
doesn't
have
look like your
a
line is
question,
muted,
I believe, for Kwame.
pray that
You wanted me to
the
proceed.
audio connects.
Yeah,
Did you
Kwame.
want me to proceed with some of the questions for Kwame or for Jalil?
Yeah, Sis Betty, I sent you the questions.
I have the run sheet now.
Okay, perfect. Sweet.
Yeah. So actually, I guess we should continue with Brother Jalil. Since the center of this is to honor our political prisoners and our Black Liberation Army comrades and their allies. Over the past year, we have lost numerous elders and leaders of that movement. And I'm wondering if either one of them or both of them could each speak to what sustains you in the movement and who some of your teachers have been. And I will yield the mic to whomever is ready to run with it. And I can repeat it again if you need me to.
Go ahead, Kwame.
All right, so just starting off, it's an honor to be here and to be able to speak tonight, especially following the legacy of comrades like Mumia and Jalil and the former Panthers that still continue to do this work to this day, despite, as you mentioned, languishing in these prisons and these dungeons for decades, some of them a half a century and more. And that's actually what sustains me in the movement. I say it time and time again, as all political prisoners know, we go through periods and times of frustration or stagnation within the movement where there's times where we felt like giving up. But one of my things that keep me going on a daily basis is my teachers like Jalil, like Baba Sekou, Bilal Sunni Ali, ones who I was blessed and honored to be able to come into the movement under their tutelage, under their guidance. After knowing about some of these people since I was 6 and 7 years old. And that's one of the things that I was grateful to my father for, making sure that I knew who our national leaders were, like my grandfather and the Panthers who done this work way before me. And so now being able to come in the last 11 years and do this work in tangent with them, anytime that I felt like stopping or felt like things weren't moving right, I just say to myself, like, how could I dare even have the thought of falling back or taking my foot off the brake when these people have been doing it and been at the forefront of the vanguard for 50 plus years, where I just did almost 8 years of solitary confinement. But we're talking about people who've done more time than I've been alive. I'm only 36. They've done more time in solitary confinement than I've been alive, or been in prison longer than I've been on this earth. And so I would just say that seeing them even come home and they would have had every right to fall back and live their life. You know what I'm saying? And so what we would call retiring from the movement work, but they never yielded for 1 minute. They came home and hit the ground running. Even some of the elders who came home failing in health, they definitely would have had all the right to fall back and, you know what I'm saying, enjoy the last weeks, months, or years that they had with their family, but they continue to give their energy and give their spirit to the struggle. And so that's what sustains me on a daily basis. And some of my teachers, like I came up reading these people, you know what I'm saying, watching documentaries on them, or, you know what I'm saying, hearing about them from Pac and hearing about from my dad of who these people were. And now years later, to have people like Jalil and Dr. Matulu and then Bilal and Sekou, who Jalil put me in tune with while he was still on the inside, to be able to have them as personal comrades and teachers, and then seeing where I'm continuing the legacy of the Panthers and of the Republic of New Africa, but where areas where I may have been short at, brothers like Jalil and Sekou and Bilal are guiding me of, no, you need to go read this, you need to study on this, and you're doing right here. But organize a people's assembly to get the community and get the people behind you to further galvanize these decolonization programs. So just being able to have that mentorship and that guidance from these teachers, there would be no Kwame Shakur without them. You know what I'm saying? There would be no Prison Life Matter without Jalil and We Are Own Liberators and Frodenon, which guided me and guided the blueprint for Prison Life Matter.
Well, tell me, how do you see the younger prisoners movement developing and evolving some of the tactics and definitions of the elder generations, if you do?
Yeah, I'll be honest with that. You know what I'm saying? It's a struggle. I mean, it's always been a struggle to do this work, to do revolutionary abolitionist work, as you know, Sister Betty, from y'all's generation. But that was at a time when consciousness was heightened, where we didn't have to do so much education or agitation to get people engaged in organization and mobilization around programs, because you were keenly aware of our colonial and neo-colonial situation, where now neo-colonialism has taken such a stranglehold and became such a success in terms of our oppressors' agenda of capitalist colonial apparatuses, that a lot of them don't know that they're slaves.
Exactly.
They're locked up in these cages, and they don't
Yes.
understand that this is modern day slavery. They don't understand the connection. You have people, maybe just because of who I am or that's around me, that identify with Prison Life Matter, but it's still a struggle to get them to go through the decolonization process with everything that we're bombarded with on a daily basis. And also with what COINTELPRO did, there was a 35-year to 40-year gap between the end of the high tide and the suppression around the time when we always say the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So when we're saying the 80s, that would be around the time of Mumia and Dr. Matulu and them's capture. So in between then, in the 2010, 2015 era, when I stepped up and got involved, and you see the newer generation, that did a lot of damage. And so what we're doing right now is steady trying to pick them pieces up and create another wave, you know what I'm saying, another momentum to get people engaged.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Did we make clear to everybody who Sister Laura was, who may not know, in case somebody's been on Mars and doesn't know? Because if not, I'd sure like to give a little bit of background before we start questioning her.
Well, it's not a question, but it's not a question of questioning her. It's giving her the podium. All right, giving her the podium. All right.
Can I just say a few words about her? Can I say just a little bit? I need permission from you guys to see what you think about that. I just know that she has been an amazing organization that tries to liberate our elders who are in the death camps. And I heard someone mention how this society treats its elderly. And the reason I want to flag that is because right now, 80% of the people that they are removing from their homes of 3 generations where the mortgages are fully paid are Black and brown elders. And so there is a pattern in this country. They don't want them to survive in prison, and they don't want them to have intergenerational wealth either. And Comrade Laura has been involved in many, wherever there was a need to have some organizing going on. Comrade Laura was very, very active in that pursuit and in that struggle. And so I'm just curious as to how she feels about this gap that's going on, and how international and human rights may have had interdicted into helping us with this struggle that we are looking at now in the era of COINTELPRO.
Thanks, Sister Betty, and thank you all for inviting me to this. I just wanted to bring Safia's voice and wisdom into it for a minute. In 88, or I guess it was 87, when you guys were just starting to decide to do it in 88, to do the demonstration, she came into the prison that I was in with the Puerto Rican Independentista women and Marilyn Buck and Linda Evans, and told us about the idea, and we were so excited because I think what happened was when I first started working in support of political prisoners around Lolita Lebron and the 5 nationalists, and they were arrested. They did their action in the 50s and 60s, and the Puerto Rican nation knew about the existence of political prisoners, but there was such an attack on the Black revolutionary movement that people didn't know, didn't realize. There was still, and there still is, and I think we have to fight it, this narrative that people go to prison for committing crimes, when we know, I mean, we say it as rhetoric, but it's true that the big banks are bigger criminals than someone who rips off a grocery store, So the whole concept of what prisons are gets elucidated if we talk about political prisoners. And I think that was part of the reason there was so much repression against political prisoners inside the prisons, like in Marion, when the warden of Marion, when he turned it into a control unit, said this is to repress revolutionary thinking among, they call them prisoners, we call them incarcerated people, we call them comrades. And Jalil, you weren't in Marion because you were in New York State at that point, but Jose Saldana, who's on this Zoom, was in Marion, and so many others. And just to say about RAP and where we come from, we are the direct descendants of Albert Noah Washington, the other political prisoners in prison, both because we carry on the tradition of Black revolution and the right to have self-determination by any means necessary, but also because directly Noah schooled a lot of the people, including Hamza, including Muhammad, who was part of the founding of RAP, and other people. And so it was begun as a revolutionary kind of organization, even though the line that we put out and what we try to do is very much, directly getting people out of prison, which sounds a little different. So that's one piece.
I want to interject here. Yeah. You teach wherever you are, like Jalil. You're always teaching. That's why I love the two of you. While you were in your 14 years in the death camp plus, you directed AIDS education, and you wrote several publications. You and Jalil both. You just never stopped doing the formal education thing, getting the titles, et cetera, but you educated those that you were around. And if I may say so, one of the things the people in the neighborhood say to me now about Baba Ralph is that he was always teaching. And this is something I notice about every one of my revolutionary comrades. You're always teaching. And I need you to talk about that because I think that's a lot of what's
Betty,
missing now.
Betty, can I interject
Please,
just 1 minute?
please,
Right. I just
anytime.
want to I don't think a lot of people know who Laura Whitehorn is,
I
right?
don't either. Can
I
I?
don't think people know a lot of what she experienced as part of being a political prisoner, but prior to that, her work in the community, as a member of various organizations. In prison, she was able to challenge. She and other comrades, Marilyn and Laura and a few others,
Kathy.
maybe challenge the Kathy Woody, challenge the solitary confinement that they were in, the kind of brutal whitewashing walls. What do they call it?
Lexington
Sensory
Control
deprivation,
Unit.
the sensory deprivation that they experienced inside prison, and how they challenged that and won. Right, that's an important milestone in the struggle that these women, these revolutionary women, was able to engage in. Lexington Control Unit. It's very important that we understand that and her experience in that, right, and the work that she did prior to going to prison. People
Yes,
don't
I
know
was
that
going to
this
get to
woman,
that.
she's a
The
warrior
Weathermen.
woman right here. You know what I mean?
Yes.
People need to know that. So I just want to make that point explicitly clear. And thank you.
Yeah, I want to also point out that when you talk about feminist education, Whitehorn helped organize and led a takeover and occupation of a Harvard University building by nearly 400 women to protest the war in Vietnam. That whole history of struggle that we are now resting on and that we need again now that they are bombing Iran is what directed her life and also got her into some good trouble and landed her in the death camp. And it's that intergenerational connection that I think Brother Kwame is referencing when he's saying there's a gap in time. And the question is, how do we fill it?
Betty, right now, and I've seen this I've seen this in rap, and I saw it in the Palestine solidarity movement, and now I saw it today. Susie, my partner Susie Day, who I put in the chat, should be shouted out because she has written about every one of us. She has stuck with and elucidated the issue of political prisoners, both in the United States and certainly in Palestine, where she now has a whole string of writings and interviews about the situation with Palestinian political prisoners, which if anyone hasn't read those, please do, because it shows you how intrinsic to white settler colonialism the use of political incarceration and political torture and on all levels is. But just to go back a minute, there's a couple of names that we don't call when we call all the BLA warriors. We don't call Asada. We don't call Nahanda. Asada and Nahanda, Asada was a beacon of freedom for the entire world. Asada, when there was a real lull in all of our struggles in the early 2000s, Asada was the voice of the Black Liberation Army is alive and well, and as long as there is the oppression of Black people, of any Black man, woman, or child, the Black Liberation Army will exist. And she showed how it's not, the BLA was never just rob banks, do this, do that. It wasn't just the actions. It was a whole ideology of we are our own liberators, and had an organization. And, when I was editing Safia Bukhari's book, all her writings, I found all that old stuff that was some of it was written down. And when we talk about Safia, everyone talks about how she was such a hard worker. She never stopped working, but she was also an ideologue. She also helped create the ideology of how we are going to free political prisoners. And by the way, her view of Jericho, it's in her book, is that first we would organize around political prisoners. And that was so important because not only was the government denying that they held political prisoners, but when we were at a rap meeting in Harlem with a lot of women from churches in Queens, and I said something about political prisoners, they said, in what country? Because they didn't realize that from Queens, there was, there was Abdul Majid and Bashir Hamid were right from Queens. So that was the first stage, and to free political prisoners. The second stage was to include politicized social prisoners. Kwame, we love you. So, that whole area, which is huge, so much bigger than the list of actual political prisoners who were people who were arrested for a political action. And the third wave was going to be abolition of the prison system, because Safia, unlike when I started working around political prisoners, the first thing we did was we did awareness of when we started in May 19th, and it was May 19th Communist Organization. I wanted to add that name. We were organizing people to know that Geronimo G. Jaga Pratt was in prison because he was a Black Panther leader, and that there were political prisoners because there's political repression, because that was in the early 70s, when it was very difficult to get people. People hadn't heard of COINTELPRO. Yes, we knew about it, but it wasn't something, there weren't big movies about it and stuff. People didn't understand that repression in the United States is directed primarily against the Black liberation movement. And so I think that that was something that Safia really struggled for. I also want to raise the name of Kwesi Balagoon, who was in the New York State prison system and died of AIDS, one of the first people that a lot of people knew who had died of AIDS, and was a fierce warrior. And we just started, Jose and Tiana has just started a Black History program for rap by reading and studying Kwesi's letter to the judge, that poem he does, which people should look at. So I just want to raise up
Kwesi was also known as somewhat of an escape artist, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, he escaped twice, I think.
I mean, I just remember when I first heard about him, what attracted me was that he was an escape artist. And he had a reputation for doing it. I'm not going to say about some of the conversations he had with Ralph.
I can imagine.
Russell Maroon Schultz. I love them for that. I just absolutely love them for that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you if you could say a few words about Prairie Fire, if I may.
The Weather Underground.
To me, is an amazing organization. And I also want to say, before we go to that in many of the grassroots organizations I'm involved with now, including the D-Theft and the fight against them incarcerating so many of our youth in the federal projects, they end with Assata's exhortation, and they say who Assata is. They raise her name. Everyone quotes that.
Yeah, when you asked
continue. What about this Prairie Fire Organizing Committee? And the reason I'm raising it is because I think some of the elements that are involved in that would be very helpful for that, to fill that gap that we are talking about. Kwame mentioned that exists today.
Yeah, although I do want to say something about what we see in the New York State prisons, which is that the other root of rap was Eddie Ellis and the Resurrection Study Group. And it's the people who lead rap led programs, not just programs around AIDS, yes, all that education, but programs around transformation of people who had been in the Black community and had the only option they had had was a gang or a criminal enterprise of some kind, and that was their school. And so Eddie Ellis and people like Jose and our a leader of rap, Jamel Bellamy, started teaching in a way that transforms people's consciousness to believe we are our own liberators. It's just so based on the Black liberation movement. So Prairie Fire was basically a group of white people we were organized. My first organizer directly was Fred Hampton in Chicago, because Fred was an organizer. And that's another thing about Safia, that she insisted on organizing and not just have, she said, and I'm nothing against this panel, but she said, we must be organizing in the community. We can't just hold events. We have to be out there organizing base building, and she described it. And so Prairie Fire was an attempt to organize other white people who had been in the anti-war movement around the war in Vietnam to support national liberation, to support the Black struggle, the Puerto Rican independence movement, the indigenous movements. You know, we were very active in the movement that came out of Attica, when there were so many people who saw that Attica was a revolution and not a complaint about conditions. And so for a minute, we actually had nationally committees that were based on support for the right of the right of self-determination for oppressed nations, and supported political prisoners. The organization fell apart because the racism that white people bring with us from our training and lives and privilege seeped into the organization in a way that allowed the leadership of the organization, who were underground, to reject the request of the Republic of New Africa and other revolutionary Black organizations for direct support. And so many of us left the organization over that. But the analysis was anti-imperialism. And just one last thing, and then I think I've been talking a long time. One thing I was noticing today, and I noticed at all the Palestine demonstrations, is that there are many organizations, like there were thousands of people in the street overnight around Iran, around the fucking bombing of Iran by Israel and the United States. They were groups, and I mean, everyone was together, but people had T-shirts and handouts and stuff. They're in organizations. And that's another thing that I think we understood in the 70s that we kind of lost I did while I was in prison, because all I was thinking about was direct organizations to support issues around prisons and political prisoners, which is important. Prisons are the repressive apparatus of the US imperialist state. But the whole question of all the other needs that people have in communities and all the other demands that they have. So we have now a movement, huge movements that understand the need for organization. And that was something the Panthers taught us, but that we didn't learn that well, because there were a lot of like single issue organizations when I got out of prison, but there weren't a lot of anti-imperialist organizations. So
I want to
really
hold on to that, and I would really like Brother Jalil and Comrade Kwame to talk to that, because I still see there's a lot of single issue organizations. From my point of view, the whole issue of deed theft is a colonial question, because we're not talking about people whose intergenerational wealth is in the millions. These are 1 and 2 family homes where they live, and they have to live because they can't afford the rents anyplace else. So this whole issue of the issue of survival, the issue of employment, the issue of health, the issue of housing, where the houseless child in New York City, 1 out of every 7 in the public school system is houseless. That's why I'm so pleased you raised the issue of Eddie Ellis, because along with this houselessness comes at least 1 or 2 major relatives that are incarcerated or have been formerly incarcerated. But the issues seem to be around houselessness. The issues seem to be around rent control. The issues seem to be about health care, when it's all one issue. And this is what I felt the Black Panthers did so well in terms of educating people. to help them connect the dots and really see what capitalism looks like in terms of the institutions that daily impact their lives. And I'm hoping that you and Jalil will talk to that, because you two are always constantly involved in organizations that make people see the connections between what we mean when we say colonialism or dual and contending powers under capitalism and their daily lives.
Thank you for that question, Betty. But let me step back just for a second to comment on something that Laura talked about or mentioned. And one thing is that I think she just basically glossed over. I don't know whether you want to get deep into it or not, but the Prairie Fire Organizing Committee came into existence as a result of the Weather Underground. And the Weather Underground came into existence as a result of the SDS, Student for Democratic Society, evolved the Weather Underground. And the Weather Underground want to inform the community why they're doing what they're doing. And they wrote a book. And the book is called Prairie Fire. The name Prairie Fire comes from a quote from Mao Zedong that stated that a spark can create a prairie fire. A single spark can create a prairie fire. So there's some history there and some understanding of the politics that evolved from that era of struggle, right? And then as a result of the Weather Underground, SDS, the Weather Underground, came to Prairie Fire Organizing Committee to distribute this book as widely as possibly could that was based upon the politics of the Weather Underground. So let's get that point explicitly clear, right? Very similar to the Black Panther Party, they put out a book called Message to the Black Movement, right? That we organized to send out to people to organize and understand why we have this underground, or why we engage in this kind of militancy activities. So that's important for us to understand, all right? So I'm going to share that so people can have some understanding that the Prairie Fire Organization did not come out of a vacuum, right? Just as Weather Underground did not come out of a vacuum, and just as SDS did not come out of a vacuum, it came out of resistance to capitalist imperialism, resistance to colonialism. All right, yes, so let's keep that in focus. All right, that our goals in the justice is always resist a system that dehumanizes, degrades, and demeans the existence of our reality, our human existence. Okay, that's true. Now, in regards to single issue politics, right? Let's put this in point. I'm gonna put this point in context of the national mobilization against genocide, right? We understand that there are a broad conditioning, right, of social order, right, of the United States, and as a result of that, right, for us in terms of Black people in this country, we recognize that we are systematically being diminished, right, are being exterminated, right, being annihilated, right, on a very timetable type of way, right? There's not a broad genocides that they did in Gaza, or what happened in Rwanda, or what happened in the Holocaust, or in World War II. This is a slow death, right? That has been committed to us for 400 years to prevent us from rising and evolving as a free and independent nation, right? They want to prevent that from happening. All right, and so when we look at these other issues, housing, education, healthcare, food, nutrition, all of that, right? We understood that as being a collective or an organized campaign against Black, brown, and indigenous people to diminish our existence and prevent us from prospering, right? And that's the reason why we had the International Tribunal, right, to raise this issue. And so therefore, when we look at these single issues, we have to look at them in the rubric of a broader, demented, dehumanizing processes of the United States government against Black, brown, and indigenous people to maintain the system of white supremacy and maintain the system of capitalist imperialism and colonialism. So that's the reason why we brought those 5 charges: mass incarceration, health inequities, environmental racism, resistance of political prisoners, and more importantly, as all of them, the state-sanctioned violence against our people, killing us. Right? That's what they do. They kill us and they get away with it. Okay, and so when we look at these single issues, we have to look at it in the broad scale, right? Where people have to do things that are local, right? Because our politics begins locally, and then it brought us into the national and into the international. And so for us, I think it's important for us to recognize that these local issues are symbolic or representative of a broader oppressive condition that we're confronted in this country. So housing is important, right? Healthcare is important. Education is important. Nutrition is important. Being safe is important, right? We are the only people that got to tell our children to talk. Why do we have to give our kids to talk, right? To tell them how they should, what kind of decorum they need to have when they're dealing with people outside the house. Why? Because we know that there are people out there who will kill them and get away with it, right?
Exactly.
So yes. And so we have to give our children.
But when I want to interject here, one thing you said was.
Let me make this point. Let me make this point, and then I'll let go. I yield, right? And that is this, right? The local issues is tied to a national issue, because what we find going on in New York, and the same thing going on up here in Rochester, the same thing is going on in Oakland, California, right? So we can see that we look at it as local and individual issues, but actually it is a national campaign, a national policy, right? Across the country. And so that's the reason why we have to look at, we did work on a local level, but we have to look at it as a national issue, okay? And that's important as well. And I yield.
Well, one of the things I wanted to interject here is the question of the origins of the Jericho movement and the Spirit of Mandela movement as a national strategy. And I'm hoping that everybody on this Zoom today will help connect those dots, because what we're seeing with what's happening with the coalition against deed theft is that they're beginning to use some of the same tactics against them that they use against any other radical political groups. For instance, one of the brothers who's trying to take back his property, the Slave Theater in Brooklyn, he caught a Zionist taking his lock off his property. He called the cops, but when the cops came, they arrested him. And while that's not supposed to be a criminal charge, it ends up being in a court that treats it as if it's a criminal act. And he is now facing incarceration for 354 days. It's the beginning of incarcerating you for a crime of self-defense. And what I remember you saying, Comrade Jalil, was ICE, police, the same thing. Just the uniforms are different. And seems to me the purpose of our struggle is to begin to help people connect the dots, that it doesn't matter what color the uniform is, whether it's blue or gray or black. It is still the army of oppression being used against the poor and working class. And within that context,
that's important. That's important to understand, but it's also important to understand the whole law enforcement apparatus, right, is one to suppress Black, brown, indigenous people, right? Whether it's inside a prison, with the prison suppressing what's going on inside the prison, or whether it's outside of prison, right? There's still a connection. During the late 70s and the early 80s, the FBI started what they call pre-sac, right? Was a way for them to monitor what's going on inside prisons for political prisoners, all right? And that was an outshoot from COINTELPRO. So let's clearly understand, this is policy, right? Yes. This is regulation. Yes. This is what they create laws, right? The United States Supreme Court recently said that if you're vagrant, you can put in prison for being vagrant, right? Yes. Being houseless, okay? Yes. But then the vagrancy laws came out of the Black codes, okay? Yes. The Black codes had vagrancy laws with Black codes. And Black people wasn't working, right? They can be put back into penal slavery. You see, let's also understand this, that this country is a slave nation. You hear what I just said? This is a slave nation. This country has never not been a slave nation. On the same ink, on the same paper, at the same time, and the same date that they ended chattel slavery, they started penal slavery. So there's a direct correlation, direct trajectory, right? From chattel slavery to penal slavery. So at what time the slavery was abolished in this country? Never. We live in a slave nation. And the people who run this country, they know that. They know the law, and they're making every attempt to make sure that they apply the law. for those of us who are just workers, listen to what I'm saying. Just if you just workers, right? We got what we call wage slavery, right? They may pay you just enough money, pay for your housing, your transportation, and your food and your health care, just enough so you can get your ass back to work and they can profit off your labor. Okay, that's slave labor. That's wage
So
labor.
within that
wage slavery.
context, if I were to ask you about this latest attack on Snap, would you say that fits right in with what you were talking about?
Yes, they are diminishing our capacity to prosper in this country. They're taking away SNAP. For instance, up here in Rochester, they got housing vouchers at $440. You know when that was established? In 1990. 1990. So they want to ask why they got a housing crisis? Yeah, they created a housing crisis, right? It's important so they can continue to fill these beds, right, for the slave system, penal slave system, mass incarceration. That's the reason why we wrote. That's the reason why we put it that we qualified it as part of genocides. Right? It's genocidal, right? And so it's important for us to know that that we are against a genocidal country. This country believes in mass incarceration, it believes in mass murder, it believes in genocides, and it believes in slavery.
Well, one of the questions that's in our list, picking your brain, shall we say, is as we struggle against the newer attacks from the state, how are you also centering our freedom fighters and elders who are still inside, i.e. Kamau, Mumia, and Zulu?
Can I just say one thing before you start on that, Jalil? I just wanted to add one thing to what Jalil was just saying because it's so important. But what I saw when I went to prison, I was in prison wherever I was, with mostly Black women, also Indigenous women. And what I saw is, and they were in their childbearing years. So either they had young children that they had left behind who were either being raised by grandparents who were too old or going into foster care, and they were going to get out so late that they wouldn't be able to have children. That's genocide. And so I think that when we look at, and part of the issue about the kind of educating we did inside and what we still do, all of us, with all the people that we organize from different sectors, is try to put that framework on things so people understand. So people understand the whole, there's this new book that I came across, Propaganda. I'm sure you've seen it, Jalil. I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's very long, but the whole concept of how the cops got onto rap. They got onto our strategy. After Jalil got out, Herman got out, Seth got out, and a lot of other people who the cops wanted to stay in because they were convicted of acts against law enforcement. New York got more people like that out than any other state. The cops have come down and are running a consistent campaign, and not just in the New York Post, but every newspaper around New York and little places. They find any crime that someone is convicted of and blow it up.
Yes.
Okay, so that's part of what we're up against. So just to speak to what Jalil was saying about the role of the police. But it also means that the communities, that the people who are incarcerated through mass incarceration are from, are destroyed. When I got out of prison, I went to Harlem to visit someone, and I looked at it and I said, this is not Harlem. This is a different place. And it had been so gentrified and so destroyed, the housing stocks. So I think those are really important things for us to understand, and for us to be making sure that people understand that prison has nothing to do with quote unquote crime and public safety, but has everything to do with genocide and the destruction of Black and brown communities.
Well, the next thing I would want to say, you mentioned, and Jalil touched on it as well, we do have a lot of protest groups at this time, and many of them are very well represented by the up and coming generation. But where is the glue that makes this into a force that can change and, oh, well, I'll just have to say the words. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Overthrow this vicious decadent ruling class. And I'm hoping you'll mention July 4th.
Jalil, you go first and do that, and then I want to talk about what's going on in the Palestine and ICE movements, because they have very well-resourced, very smart networks working on the issues of political prisoners and support. Much better than we did, Jalil, back in the day when, remember the Panther 21? We had like, I don't know, for Asada, we had like 10 people in court, nothing. For you guys, remember when you came into New York and I think we had 25 people sitting there cheering you guys on. So, but go for it.
Again, thank you for that question, Betty. Recognize that there's thousands of various organizations across the country, right? One of the things that we are confronted is issues of factionalism and sectarianism, right? And that's part of the problem that we have in terms of our own indoctrination, right? And when I say indoctrination is this, that we've been taught, right, that this system is based upon two particular ideals: individualism and competition, right? If you remove capitalism, if you move individualism from capitalism, you don't have capitalism. If you move competition from capitalism, you don't have capitalism. And these are two fundamental concepts, right, that we've been indoctrinated with, that unfortunately has also been migrated, and I use that word deliberately, migrated into our movement. Right, so we still have competition and individualism in our movement, and it stifles our capacity to build the kind of unity, national unity, that we need to do. And that's the reason why we're calling for the national mobilization against genocides. Right, our intent is to create a convergence of progressive forces, those who understand, right, that we are anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialism, anti-patriarchy, anti-sexism, anti-fascism, pro-liberation and independence of oppressed people. All right, and if you're on that page, then you should be coming to Atlanta, Georgia on July 4th, 2026, because this conversion is for the purpose of us developing a national network of these organizations across the country, so we know who we are, know what resources are available, and be able to network with one another in a capacity to strengthen the overall movement, right? So that's a process, right, that we're moving towards, right? Because if we have this national convergence, and if successful national convergence, when people go back to their communities, go back to their regions, at least be on the same page. Again, I said we'd be on the same page. We not necessarily be on the same paragraph on that page, but we at least be on the same page in the same book, right? Maybe do different paragraphs, all right? And that's not a problem with that, being on different paragraphs, right? Long as you're doing the work, right? And if you're doing the work in your communities, right, you're doing the work in your state, doing the work in as part of this national determination, then we will succeed. We will win, right? There's no doubt in my mind about that. We are going to win, okay? But it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be arduous, it's gonna be bloody, right? And people got to be prepared for that. But in order for us to strengthen our capacity to go forward, we got to have this national convergence of progressive forces from across the country, so we can have a sit down, so we can talk as much as we possibly can, knowing that we're going to be there are going to be individuals in there who's going to be contrary, we're going to be in opposition, right? We understand that, but we have to confront that straight up in your face. Listen, either down or you ain't down. But we got to find out who are down, so we can be able to build and strengthen our capacity to counter this oppression, to counter this fascism. If we fail to do that, then we continue to be suffering the individualism, fractionalism, competition, and sectarianism across this country. So we got to figure out ways how to alleviate that, and we think that this is one of the processes for doing so. It is tactical towards building what we call people's assemblies across this country, because we have to create alternative systems of governing. This government does not work for us, it has not worked for us, and it will not work for us. Therefore, we have to create alternative systems of governing. And the only way we can do that, we got to bring the forces together, sit down at the same table, right? We might have different meals, but at least we'll be at the same table, okay? Some may be kosher, some may be halal, some may be not. Okay, but we got to be able to eat together, okay, and be able to go forward in our struggle collectively. And so that's the process we'll be moving forward for July 4th, 2026, Atlanta, Georgia. Be there or be square.
That's right. Thank you. Just before we turn to you, Laura, while we still have Kwame on, I know we just wanted to toss it back to you, comrade, to see if you have any thoughts on these same questions or anything else you want to bring. We can't hear you right now.
Brother Kwame, are you still on? We can't hear you, brother. You're muted.
It might be where the audio is connecting. I see you're unmuted, but we're not hearing any audio. All right, we'll come back. Maybe we can come back to you. But shout out when you're on.
If we're going to continue, though, with what you just said, I want to toss the ball back to Sister Whitehorn again, Comrade Whitehorn again, pardon me. That has to do with the whole experience of organizing an organization such as RAP. Because we have to face the fact that our schools, the ruling class has, when they destroyed our struggle for community control and gave us the Democratic Party decentralization death camp philosophy, we ended up with the school to prison pipeline. What worries me is that if the movement within the prisons to humanize our youth does not keep up with the struggle on the outside, convergence such as what's happening in July 4th are seriously going to experience a real gap in terms of the ethnicity of the participants. That's what's worrying me.
No, I think it's definitely a real issue. I think it's a real issue in a lot of places because.
And it also becomes a class issue.
Yeah.
Because the youth who managed to jump over the gauntlet and get into college are not necessarily the same youth who had the education of being in the death camps.
Yeah, but I will say there are groups that are doing work specifically, like parallel to ours, specifically with youth.
Could you speak on that? Could both of you, and Kwame, if we can get him back?
Yeah, I really want to hear what Kwame has to
I
say.
really want to hear what he has to say about this.
But and one of the things that Jose says that I saw in women's prison too happening was that there's the mass incarceration is becoming an intergenerational phenomenon where you have fathers or grandfathers and sons or grandsons and mothers and daughters in the same prison together serving time. And so that makes the work of education inside the walls really more important. But I also wanted to add, I'm glad you called Eddie Ellis's name again, but for people who don't know, he was a member of the Black Panther Party too. And I think one of the things that was so important about the Panthers, in addition to everything we've said, is that they not only pointed out the problems, but brought solutions that were not dependent on the state. And so much of the work in the movement today, I think a lot because of the 501c3s, the groups that are funded and they have to, that their program of work is in order to get funding and not in order to actually do the organizing, and they're scared of doing things because they'll lose their funding, is that people are thinking a lot about how to force the state to give them something, which is fine. We should do that. The state should give us.
It's their tax money.
Yeah, but if that's the only goal, then you end up making compromises because the state never gives you money and says, here, run it. They give you money and they say, and report back and show us what we've done and all that. So I think that that's a really important thing too that we should remember. I remember that Wanda, rest in peace too, Safia's daughter, wrote in her preface that she had been so angry at her mother for years because her mother was busy being a Panther and going to prison and not with her, which she wanted. But that when she came to understand what Safia actually had done, one of the things she understood was that there wouldn't be sickle cell testing in Harlem if it hadn't been for the Panthers. You know, I hope people have seen the movies about the Lincoln Detox Program and Matulu's relationship to it, about the ways that, and that still exists now, acupuncture to deal with drug addiction instead of giving people methadone and getting them hooked on something else. And that, you know, people think about it. We think about it. Oh yeah, the Panthers had the Breakfast for Children program. That was a fight all the way. The cops tried to shut it down at every moment. And so creating those programs and carrying them out. And I think that's, you know, that's what we tried to do in prison, is to do programs that were not put up by the prison administration and have programs that were out of the view of the prison administration. So I think that that's a really important thing, and that should be one of the things that we talk about in Atlanta in the summer, in July. Why couldn't it be up here where it's God, you guys. But but we should be talking about that, about what kinds of programs are we creating within, because, you know, people talk a lot about, ask us, rap is abolitionist. We're abolitionists because we see the prison system as part of the state apparatus of oppression. But being an abolitionist doesn't just mean tearing shit down. It means creating something, not that will replace it, but that will serve the purposes that it says it serves and doesn't. I hope that was clear. It was a little complicated.
Within that context, again, I just hope Kwame can get on.
Yeah, really.
What also concerns me, in addition to how this class divide is growing as a result of, you know, we've got one group of young people who are going to the higher educational institutions and another who are going directly to jail. As the monopoly script goes, they do not pass go, they do not collect their $200. What is happening with the remaining community-based organizations or institutions that do exist? For instance, so many of the huge churches that we used to go to fundraise for Mumia, they have been converted into condos. There's many of those churches in Harlem are gone. Many of the institutional community places that we used to go to. I mean, thank goodness D12 is still there. So what community-based organizations, because if we can't connect with these community-based organizations, there will be a split between them and the movement, it seems to me.
Yeah, and Jalil, I hope you can speak to that, because with Citizen Action, I know when we talked at one point, you said you were going to door, but you were dealing with school-age kids, right?
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, I work for an organization called Citizen Action of New York. We have 7 chapters in New York State, and we deal with the issues of housing, education, healthcare, criminal justice, and those kind of concerns. One of the things that I was grateful for, having been hired by Citizen Action, is that they taught me things that I did not know in terms of organizing, like canvassing, going into community, doing door to door and knocking on doors, doing phone banking, right? Get on the phone. I had 10 people in my office. We're doing phone banking, right, with different parts of the room, and everybody's on the phone. I'm calling up our state legislators and other folks and telling them about different bills and different concerns that the community have, and trying to organize that in that capacity. And that is training, right? One of the things I tell my committee, because I have a committee called the Economic Justice Committee for Citizen Action, right? And what I tell our committee, that we're engaging in class struggle, right? We was on Betty's radio program with the co-executive director of Citizen Action, talking about owning, right? Invest in our New York, right? We're challenging the rich and the super rich, right? We're saying they need to pay their fair share in taxes, right? That's class struggle, right? So anywhere that you look at in terms of the issues of monetary and how money is being distributed or allocated for certain forces and certain communities and not being provided to other communities, right? That's class struggle. And so it's important for us to understand the dynamics of which we engage in, that we are challenging the rich and the super rich. I give another example, New York City. One out of every 25 person in New York City is a millionaire. Did you know that? Right? One out of every 25. That's statistically held. One out of every 25 persons. You can see 25 people, one of the persons may very well be a millionaire in New York City. New York State is one of the richest states in the country. Richest state in the country. But we have poor communities. We have and they're devastating our community with gentrification and other forms of dehumanizing our community, dehumanizing people and taking control of our communities. So for us, it's important that we understand that we're dealing in class struggle on the local level, as well as dealing with the capitalist imperialism on a national level. And so get involved find an organization that you know is engaged in the struggle, right? Get involved, join the organization. Here in Rochester, for me, it's Citizen Action, right? In New York City, it would be RAP, right? It would be Jericho. It would be the Spirit of Mandela, right? Get involved in one of these organizations and help us build, because we're connected to each other, help us build outward, right? When we talk about power to the people, when we say that, we mean people who are organized, right? Organize, mobilize. We have an idea. Educate, agitate, organize, mobilize. Educate, agitate, organize, mobilize. Say it one more time. Educate, agitate, organize, mobilize. Right? Apply those principles. You apply those principles, we're going forward. We're able to move people. But if you're not educating people, if you're not agitating them to take action, if you're not organizing them to in the capacity which they can take action, and you're not mobilizing them, right, then you sedate, right? You're sleeping, right? And one of the things they're trying to prevent us from doing is being woke, right? and let me make one more point explicitly clear, right? And that's this here, right? When you're woke, you ain't never going back to sleep again, okay? You ain't going back to sleep again, all right? So our golden objective is to get rid of the sedative, right? The sedative to keep you asleep, right? And that's all of the distractions that they put before you, right? The TVs and the iPhones and the TikTok and all these distractions, right? All right, it's almost like what they call it, a placebo. It's a placebo, all right? And Haj Malik Shabazz, he made a comment about they want you to suffer peacefully, right? And he suggested that he told us that it's like you going to the dentist, okay? And they shoot you with Novocaine while they pull out the tooth out your head, right? You don't feel nothing, but slobber is dripping down your chin, right? You're suffering peacefully, and that's what they do with us, all these distractions, right? And the drugs and the alcohol and everything else, right? It prevents us from being focused on the goals and objectives we need to achieve.
If I
right?
can,
So we don't
I
want
would
us
like to take
suffer
what
peacefully.
you
We want to be
just
woke to
said.
be able to fight back.
I would like to interject from the question and answer. Someone made it quite clear. They said, we are back in survival mode, and they are about to come for us again. This time it will not be just the warriors. It will be all of us, Black, white, women, children, as long as we are poor and or powerless. And this is what we need to be strategizing about. And this is why I'm hoping that we can be successful in this gathering on July 4th. We've got to find a common language to talk to each other and an intergenerational language that passes on what works and what doesn't work to the next generation of frontline warriors. Oh, he's back. Good.
So one of the comrades here in the space has a question for you all. If you could please come through and maybe just a quick intro and your question. I'll make sure that we can see you.
The name is Raza Khan Wali. I'm with Nation Time Judicial Research. And I have one minor problem. Not ain't a minor problem, it's a major problem. Anytime the CIA feels as though you are important enough to target, they turn you over to the FBI. There's no such thing as an Black Panther. That's why I feel. Mr.
Say it again.
Huh?
Say it again. For the people on the left.
Huh?
Say it for us in the back.
I say, anytime the CIA target you and feel as though you're important enough, you are such a threat to security, they turn you over to the FBI for prosecution. You will never offer a radar. You know what I mean? So I just feel as though there's no such thing as an ex-Black Panther. You Black Panther for life.
I think what happened with the Uhuru 3 illustrates this, because Chairman Omali Yeshitela had, been active with the Black Panther Party, and he had formed an organization that was using the practical application of Marcus Garvey successfully. He had restored housing that had been abandoned. He had created doulas in St. Louis that was successfully reversing the statistics on the infant mortality rate in his area in St. Louis. The infant mortality rate is so high that if the babies had lived, it would have filled 15 kindergarten classes. And all of a sudden, he becomes a traitor and a spokesman for Russia. It's important to note he beat that. He ended up with just probation, doing what they already are doing, serving the community, and now they're getting out from under that and the fines that were alleged. And the judge said there's no point in giving you excessive fines because all you do is what you're already doing. It's fundraising to give the money back to the community.
Betty,
Unmute yourself, Laura.
Can I make a point off of that? Because I'm glad
Please
you said
do,
that,
please
because
do.
it's so. What I wanted to say before too is one of the reasons we had, way before I went to prison to jail a lot of times before I went to prison, but before I took on, armed struggle directly. And one of the reasons we had trouble raising support for political prisoners was that there were people who would say, well, I don't agree with their tactics.
Yes.
And, when we recently saw the government come down really hard on Sami Dun around Palestine and political prisoners about 2 years ago, I guess. And now there's the Prairie Land cases where a group of anarchists who are being put on trial. I mean, and the charges and the Cop City defendants. I mean, all of those cases are about trying to to divide them. It sort of builds on what Jalil was saying about individualism and competition, is to try to divide the movement by having people say, oh, that person has these politics or those, so don't support them. And what I've started saying to people is, you don't like what they did? Fine, get them out of prison and argue about strategy. Because if we don't stand together at this point and defend everyone targeted by the state, who's, I'm talking about the left. I'm not talking about Trump, MAGA people, but they have their own movement, unfortunately. But if we don't come forward and support everyone, whether we agree with them or not, it's the state. We disagree more with the state than we do with any other organization. I also just want to suggest maybe, SB, that I'm so brokenhearted that we couldn't hear from Kwame. But maybe he could write answers or write things, and you could send it to everyone who's on the chat, everyone who's on the Zoom.
Is he able to record? Is he able to record?
I think we've got him. Kwame, do you want to go ahead?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on lockdown. Can't even get on.
Hang on, you're muted.
You probably got a guard passing by the cell or something, so he has to, get shade.
All right, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, comrade.
Definitely.
All right. Yeah, I was gone. I've been on lockdown for 3 months, and we only get 1 shower a week. I had put it off since the beginning of the call. I kept making the pigs come back, but I had to leave. So if y'all could ask me the question or whatever I missed, back in.
Laura, I think you should pick up the gauntlet in terms of what you were saying before.
Well, I think, Kwame, it's so good to be on this call with you. The question that Betty had asked originally was, we were talking about the different generations who are being repressed and destroyed if the system had its way by incarceration and by whether people are a political prisoner or not. Incarceration is political because it is the tool of the state. And so what you are seeing and what you are finding in educating and talking to and learning from some of the younger people that are coming into the system and that are in the system with you. And I know different states are different. So I know Indiana probably is different, but in the past, it was a very politicized, incarcerated population. So I wonder if you're seeing that now and, what you're feeling about that.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I came in, one of the comrades that seen the organizing that I was doing in the joint of my generation was a comrade named Shakur, who had been politicized in the 80s at Pendleton Correctional Facility at a time when the New African People's Organization and the New African Independence Movement was still at a heightened level throughout the state of Indiana. Before a lot of those prisoners, them captives, they just went and did 30 plus years in solitary confinement, like Balagoon and Christopher Trotter and all of them. And so when he seen the organizing and the work that I was doing, he was like, I haven't seen nothing like this since the 80s. But at the time, I was still moving off of outdated politics from Malcolm. Like, that's what I came up on since I was 4 years old. That's what I was given was Malcolm's teachings, Malcolm's books, and a lot of it was outdated, where I grew up like literally thinking like the white man was the devil and that everything was based on black and white politics. And so at this time, all I was doing was trying to create a political and economic and military structure inside the prisons and outside. And that's when Shaka had introduced me to the writings of comrades Sadiq and Shakur and the book Stand Up, Struggle Forward. And it immediately transformed my political line to that of class and national based versus the social construct of race and racism. And so with the I guess you could say the following or the membership that I had at that time, I immediately just started shifting them towards New African nationalism and introducing them to class struggles and class contradictions, and basing everything that I did on educating these brothers about capitalism and the direct link from our social and economic political oppression in the New African community to the mass incarceration of our people. And from that time, there has been a rise in the political consciousness of prisoners wherever I've been at. But overall, in general, there's such a low level of activity, whether that be from chemical warfare that the police are implementing or allowing in the joints now. And then again, what we spoke about on the last segment of that gap, that was a major blow to the movement and to our organizations, both on the street and in prison, when they sent my chairman, Larry Hoover, to the feds at a time when he was transitioning a lot of the ideology of that from the criminal mentality to a revolutionary political ideology. And him already having basically the largest black street tribe in the country and in the prison system, they knew that would be a major threat. It reminded them of the Panthers, you know what I'm saying, and them saying that it was the biggest internal threat to the United States. And so they knew that if all of his members got on the same time that he was on of shifting from gangster disciple to that of growth and development, they would have a major problem on their hands. So they began locking him and Jeff Ford and other political street leaders up in solitary confinement. So at the same time that Sekou was being held in Colorado And you know what I'm saying, Jalil and all of them were being held in solitary confinement in the prisons around the country. They started putting these leaders in Colorado with Sekou and them in a way to silence and suppress the rise of prisoners' consciousness. And so we're just now starting to see a resurgence in that in Indiana and in around the country because, like I said, the repression was very, very detrimental. And so that's something that, like I said, I'm never going to give any easy claims or sugarcoat or, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of prisoners have to be honest with that because we have chapters all across the country with Prison Life Matter. And when we're talking to these field marshals and these cadre, I thought that it was only in Indiana, but I'm hearing the same thing in North Carolina, the same thing in Virginia, the same thing in Michigan, the same thing in Texas, is that there's only a few of us. There's only a handful of political prisoners on deck at a time really pushing that line. And you know what I'm saying? We're up against resistance, not only from the state, but the neo-colonial mentality of our fellow captors and our fellow members of our street tribes. And so that's the main thing that I'm on right now is pushing what's called the One Love concept of repoliticizing the folks, the vice lords, the Blackstones, and then any Crip or Blood that's around, and then also just identifying these false race politics. And you know what I'm saying? I work with to the hatred of the prison system. They'll see me shaking hands and hugging or sitting in the room with the president of the Aryan Brotherhood or the Saxonite, and we work together to end the violence and to get everybody together down here.
Thank you. Thank you, Kwame. It's always good to have your voice on here, and thank you I'm so glad you got to come back. Also, Comrade Tabari wants to shout you out and is here, and sends his greetings and blessings.
Can I make a couple of comments?
Yeah, please take it away with those comments,
right.
and then I think we're
The
going to close out.
Okay, cool. The brother who was in the audience who said that once you're a Black Panther, you're always a Black Panther. So true, right? I won't argue that point, right? But he also mention something about the CIA. And I think it's important for us to reflect and understand that the CIA drugged our community. It destroyed 2 generations of our people with their cocaine campaign that they saturated our communities with cocaine. The CIA did that. Right, that is the government chemical warfare on Black, brown, and indigenous communities. Let's understand that this country has engaged in chemical warfare on its own people. Prior to that, they made another initiative, chemically sending a chemical fog in certain communities back in 1950s. Right, this country does that. Right, it experiments on our people. Right. It uses chemical warfare to suppress our people. It used naked violence, shooting us in the streets. Well, Michael Brown, they shot what, 60 times? 60 times, right? And left them in the streets, in the streets for 5 hours, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Another brother in Chicago, they
Wouldn't
shot
cover his body up.
Yeah. That's terror. That's straight up terror.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And why did you shoot somebody 60 times?
Yes.
Right? To inform the community, that's what we do to you. Okay? That's what it's fear, it's terror. Okay? To prevent dissent in this country. And so for us, it's important to understand, as Laura says, or Billy says, we have to connect the dots. Right? We have to connect the dots and understand that this country does not work for us, it has not worked for us, and it will not work for us. And now it's become plain naked violence, right? Poverty is violence. Okay, let's understand that, right? Poverty is violence. People going hungry, that's violence. People being homeless, that's violence, right? And so it's important that we have this kind of understanding that it's not one segment of the government, it's not just the FBI, right? It's not just the police department, that's not just the CIA, it's an entire government. Right, so let's take that into heart, right? What we're up against, we're fighting against billionaires. There's 13 billionaires in the cabinet right now, in the White House cabinet, and what made me reflect on that, right? It was 13 people, 13 white men that created this country, right? 13, right? So that's what I'm saying. They're now recreating or deconstructing the country, right? The 13, right? Billionaires. So we're fighting against billionaires. And so we got to figure out ways how to actually use our funds the way we need to raise our funds. So let me make this a party note. Everybody who's on this Zoom, everybody's on this webinar, right? Find an organization that you want to support, right? If you can't do nothing more than donate, all right? So we can continue to do the work, right? Because cake sales and selling T-shirts, which I'm doing, right? It's not gonna be enough, okay? So I'm trying to create a new revenue stream. Matter of fact, let me show you.
While you're doing that, can I interject that on a positive note? The resistance of the community to ICE is a parallel with the resistance to the community against chattel slavery.
Absolutely.
And I also want to say the resistance of young people in the neighborhood when they see their elders being taken out from false deed theft, they go in and occupy those homes so that the marauders who claim to own the houses can't come in and destroy the infrastructure. There's a parallel movements going on, and I'm hoping we can get those parallel groups to join us in July 4th.
Yes, absolutely. I think in the chat there's information on the July 4th mobilization, and we are just gonna turn it over to a quick video from Jihad, who's gonna speak a bit on Bro Kojo, and then we have a comrade who's gonna close us out with some announcements. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Jihad Abdul-Mumia Alhamdulillah from the Jericho movement. I'd like to start off in representation of Kojo Bomani by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin Nabiyyi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah. And saying in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. All praise be to Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Jihad Abdul-Mumia Alhamdulillah from the Jericho movement. I'd like to start off in representation of Kojo Bomani by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin Nabiyyi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah. And saying in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. All praise be to Allah, peace and blessings be upon the Prophet Muhammad, his family and companions, all of them together, and what comes after. Here representing Kojo Bomani, Alhamdulillah, my comrade in Black Liberation Army. Unfortunately, he was not able to call in from prison to speak to you comrades and sisters and brothers, but let me represent you as saying that he is a dear comrade in the struggle, been in prison over half a century. He needs our support. My memory from being with Kojo in prison is that he was a strong, courageous brother that you would want on your side, inshallah. So we ask for your support for Kojo. He needs it now. He has medical conditions that need tending to. 51 years in prison, you can only imagine. And we need to corral ourselves together to make those demands and those requests and those strategies to get our comrade out of prison, along with other brothers and sisters that remain. So I salute you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, comrade. Let me also raise up, we have to continue to fight to get Kamal Siddiqui out of prison. We got to raise the fight to get Mumia Abu-Jamal out of prison. We got to raise the fight to get Jojo Bowens out of prison. We got a host of comrades who are still in prison that we're fighting to get out. If you're interested in this fight, please go to Jericho website, NYC and learn about our political prisoners who are fighting for, we're fighting for their release. We have to build a campaign and we have to mobilize for it. We believe that the power of the people, right? People who are organized and really to move forward in regards to our struggle. And with that said, I yield. Assalamu alaikum.
Uhuru, and I want to thank all the panelists who participated. Want to apologize for not being able to juggle my balls in the air too well today in terms of different commitments. But I salute everyone who put this panel together and who put this program online. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Will we be able to get a copy of the recording?
Yes, we'll be working on getting the recording out and getting any other things that were shared tonight for folks to have. I just want to say many thank you again. I'm just gonna come with the announcements and we close out. I just want to say many thank you again to my other comrades and everyone who's working behind the scenes, everyone who's in front of the scenes here, and to all our wonderful, amazing, such depth of knowledge guests tonight for just dropping serious gems, nuggets on us tonight. It's so appreciated. And so, with that being said, I want to share my screen of some upcoming events that we're having, and I hope not to forget any. And if I have a quick few seconds, I'm going to just really big up back our Black Panther, our last remaining Black Panthers, and our typical usual OGs, which I think we can see some of the OGs are here tonight, and one of them is Sister Yasmeen Majid, who couldn't be here, was trying to get on here and had some issues with her vehicle. So just want to shout her out for trying, and much love to another OG in the house in spirit. So this is my where is my screen? Hold on one second, please. Let me get back here. The first one I'm going to bring up while I'm speaking with you is the event that we mentioned is happening. I have so many windows open. Where are we? Yes, this one. The event that's happening this Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully, folks can see that screen on there. It's the National Mobilization Against Genocides, Building the People's Senate. You've heard us talk about this immensely over the past few months and definitely today. So just letting folks know this is happening. On Wednesday, we do not want it to just be us that's in the building. We want it to be more than just a choir. We want you to invite your local friends, your friends, your neighbors, your other community organizing, gathering spaces. Please, we want everyone on this webinar. Essentially, we'll have our two co-coordinators of the People's Senate, our dear sis Shaki Binta, and our wonderful comrade here, Baba Jalil Muntaqim, who will be hosting us that night. And this is what the discussion will be on: building the People's Senate. You have to register. That's right there. Please don't forget to register. I don't think we're streaming this one, so if you want to see it, you have to register to get on. And this is just an open invite to let folks know what's happening on that weekend of July 4th, the ways you can tap in, the ways you can get involved in the larger work, but also thinking about travels and how we can have the different regions come together and get there. So we'll be having all that conversation. We'll be also highlighting the fact that we're more in need for this now than ever. So this is not just your typical conversation. It's going to go beyond just July 4th. And I think I've said enough about that. We can put that link in there in the chat. Also, hopefully folks see this. This is another calendar space of the Spirit of Mandela calendar. Is this showing all the different calendar looks, or am I still in the last screen?
Yeah,
You guys
this
are
is now.
seeing. Yes. So this is upcoming things we have. Again, you can check out our calendar. It's always been updated. And if you have an event that you think makes sense, or it's local enough, or whatever the case may be, we just don't do the Northeast. If there's something happening on the West Coast and you want to share that, please reach out to us to put your your event on here. This is what's coming up in the next few uh uh weeks. Next week actually is this one, Salute to Revolutionary Women of the World. So tune into that. I'll stop sharing and share another piece that we have. 1 second. so I have this one. This is the last one I'll share here, and this is for our dearest Reverend Joy Powell. We have a amazing event happening for her. Her birthday is coming up, March 7th. It is going to be a great bash. It's going to be a wonderful time. For people who do not know, Reverend Joy Powell is in prison in a woman's prison in upstate New York, and there has been so much terror and just straight up abuse that happens at that prison. We need her out. We need her freed. We also need her in this space with us to do this great work. So this is the info. If you want to take a picture, we'll be sending this out however best we can. And again, great much kudos to all the organizers behind planning this birthday bash. And this is what that is all about. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
You're muted, Sophia.
So that's the event. Those are the events coming up. As I mentioned, that the main thing for us is the People's Senate that's coming up. We have many ways in which you can get tapped in with us, and we would love to see everyone on board this journey. We need to bring our work together. That's part of what the People's Senate is. We're not trying to stop anyone from their particular organizing, but how can we better collaborate and come to each other's meetings in a way where we're not vying for schedule and time. So please just know that's what the People's Senate is about. We're all about the community and getting all the support that we need. So we need everyone and their mothers there. And much love again to our OGs who constantly are here. They're in the room. They're on the Zoom right now. They're on the YouTube live stream, I'm sure. And much respect to our last remaining Panthers in prison, Brother Kamal Siddiqui, Brother Zulu Whitmore, and Brother Mumia Abu-Jamal. Again, they are languishing in prison and they need to be freed. And we are looking, I'm told that we're looking to what's the word I'm looking for now? Re-up Brother Zulu's case in a way to get more attention and notoriety out there. He's been in prison for a long time in Louisiana, and he needs to be freed. Mumia needs to be freed. Kamal just turned 73 last week. Mumia is dealing with a host different health issues on and off, and thankfully he's stable, but he needs what he needs, and that's treatment, regular retinal treatment from a specialist. So we're fighting these different fights, right? And we absolutely cannot lose any more imprisoned loved ones in prison. So we need to strengthen this fight, and we also need to connect the larger fights as usual. We saw what just happened today with the crazy acts of this government and Israel. So we have to just really, really ramp up the fight. Much love to everyone. Thank you again for tuning in with us with NYC Jericho. Stay up with us. We can put our contact in there, and much love and thank you to our great hosts and speakers tonight.
Absolutely, greatly appreciated, comrade. And one more again, just we had mentioned some of the OGs that were and warriors and freedom fighters that were in the space, and just want to shout them out by name, including Mama Pam Africa and Baba Sundiata Akoli. So just want to make sure that and the many other long distance runners for freedom that have been a part of this physically, virtually. So we thank you all for your contributions, and we'll continue to pick up the work. All power to the people. Greatly appreciated.
What's the call? What's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free them all.
Free them all.
Free them all.
Thank you.
Free them all.
Free the land.